Hello, welcome to the European Open briefing for Tuesday, September the 5th. I'm Rafi Barajan, currency analyst at xm.com, and we're going to be looking at the latest developments in the currency markets today. So we still have quite a bit of a risk of relating to the renewed tensions in the Korean Peninsula. There are reports that North Korea is planning another missile test. So this is keeping up demand for safe havens. And although most major pairs are fairly steady, the dollar, the risk of is weighing on the markets, and the dollar continues to struggle, particularly against the yen. The main focus for the US dollar this week will be Fed speakers. The Fed will start its blackout period next Monday ahead of the FOMC meeting on September 19-20th. So this will be the last words we will get from Fed policymakers, which may provide some clues as to what to expect at the September meeting. The main mover this morning has been the Australian dollar. It gained on strong exports data as well as the RBA policy meeting, although it wasn't able to hold on to those gains. It seesawed a bit before settling slightly up on the day. The RBA kept interest rates on hold as expected, and in commodities we are seeing the US oil market returning back to normal as Hurricane Harvey recedes. So let's start with gold, because gold did reach an 11-month high yesterday on the back of that hydrogen bomb test allegedly by North Korea over the weekend. There are reports in South Korean media that North Korea is moving intercontinental ballistic missile towards its west coast to conduct another test. In the meantime, South Korea held live fire drills yesterday, and it's also seeking to double its warhead weight limit, which means that they'd be able to fire more powerful missiles against North Korea if needed. And the US is pushing for fresh sanctions for North Korea as the UN Security Council meets to discuss what to do next. The yen and the Swiss franc are also benefiting from the risk-off, though not as much as gold. The Swiss franc is a little bit mixed this morning due to weak Switzerland's GDP growth in the second quarter. Let's have a look at the US dollar now. Dollar yen has been drifting downwards this week. It did touch a one-week low of 109.18 earlier this morning. As I said, the main focus for the dollar will be Fed speakers. The Fed normally, it's standard for the Fed to have a blackout period where no Fed officials are allowed to speak a week ahead of the FOMC meeting. So this will be the last chance to hear from Fed officials what we're likely to expect at the September 19-20 FOMC meeting. Today we have Fed Governor Lyle Brainerd and Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari expected to make public appearances. Today is Services PMI day. We already had Asian PMIs released earlier in the morning, the main one being China's cash-in PMI. The Services PMI rose to a 3-month high of 52.7 from 51.5 in July. And although data isn't directly impacting the yuan, given that the yuan is fixed currency, it has helped expectations that China's economy is not headed to a sharp slowdown in the second half of this year. That has helped alleviate downside pressure on the yuan. Of course, we also have a weaker dollar as well, impacting this, plus a number of measures taken by Chinese authorities. So we can see the dollar has been weakening over the past few months. The yuan is actually up 6% against the dollar so far this year. It did touch a 16 months high of 6.51 per dollar. So this is also helping risk sentiment in the region. And looking at another Asian currency, the Australian dollar, it did rise sharply following some positive data out of Australia. Actually, the current account deficit was much worse than expected for the second quarter, but markets cheered the net trade contribution data, which came in at 0.3% versus expectations of minus 0.05%. So this has increased the likelihood of an upside surprise in tomorrow's GDP figures. In the meantime, the Reserve Bank of Australia held its latest monthly monetary policy meeting, keeping rates at 1.5% as expected, and the statement was a bit more upbeat than the previous one, although overall we know that the RBA is on hold, having a neutral bias, but the RBA statement did say that they expect growth to pick up over the coming year and see stronger growth in the labor market. Household debt remains a concern given that household incomes are rising much more slowly, and they also maintain their warning on an appreciating exchange rate, but overall it's been positive for the Australian dollar. But despite that, we did see the Aussie drift back after that spike up before going back up again. It's currently trading up 0.3% against the US dollar. Looking at oil prices, that we can see WTI crude has been steadily recovering as Hurricane Harvey recedes, and we are seeing refineries in Texas and the surrounding region come back online. Gasoline prices have fallen back sharply. The WTI crude, of course, has been much more heavily impacted than Brent crude. It's currently trading around $47.50 a barrel. So the focus going forward will be the inventories. We've got the API tomorrow and the EIA inventories on Thursday. The recovery, the modest recovery in oil prices has helped the Canadian dollar, although the Canadian dollar was mainly boosted recently from the much stronger than expected GDP figures for the second quarter in Canada, and that in itself boosted expectations for another rate hike by the Bank of Canada this year. In fact, the Bank of Canada meets tomorrow for its latest policy meeting. But expectations are that the Bank of Canada will wait until their October meeting before raising rates. They will likely stand pat at tomorrow's meeting. The dollar loonie hit a fresh 2-year low of 1.2337. That's a 2-year high for the Canadian dollar. Looking at today's economic calendar, we just had services PMI out of France, the final reading, which was revised lower from 54.5 to 54.9. We've got the Eurozone ones coming up later, as well as the UK one. The UK one will be important given that that's the first and final reading. And we're also going to see retail sales out of the Eurozone, factory orders in the US, and dairy auction, which may impact the New Zealand dollar. And apart from Lyle Brainerd and Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkar, we're also going to have the RBA Governor Philip Lowe also speaking at later today. That's it from me. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.